All right. Thank you, everyone, for attending this final session of day two. It is going to be a kind of interview and panel discussion between myself and our two keynote speakers, Nathan and Andrew. So thank you again for agreeing to do this panel. It's a great opportunity for me to ask a bunch of questions, but also everybody else. So thank you.
All right.
I'm going to start by asking a number of questions uh, to Andrew and Nathan, but I'd also like you guys to think about different questions that you'd like to ask. If it was maybe something from their keynote or something else that you've thought about over the sessions over the past 2 days, today is a great this is a great opportunity for you to kind of get those questions in and get some unique perspectives on their answer. So, starting with that, I will ask a kind of a pretty easy question to you guys. Nathan, is this your first time in Japan?
This feels like an icebreaker. Yes. Yes, it is my first time in Japan. Pretty exciting.
What is your impression so far of Japan?
I think I said this morning. Tokyo is such a big city. I'm kind of overwhelmed by the sheer size of the city, but it's absolutely beautiful. Really enjoyed exploring different parts of it. Yeah.
And this is a very important question for Japanese people, but what is your favorite food so far?
Oh, it's got to be the sushi.
Good answer.
Okay.
Sushi is very good.
Is that a passing answer?
Pass.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, Andrew, you mentioned that you've been to Japan before, correct?
Hi.
When was the last time you were in Japan?
Over 10 years ago,
Um,
before the pandemic, for sure.
what do you think has changed in the past decade? Have you noticed anything in particular?
I'm not a good person to answer this question because in my previous visits, I didn't really see Japan, just did work. So I saw the airports, I saw the hotel, I saw offices. I didn't do anything very touristy. So I don't have a good measure. But this time I went to Kyoto and then Kawaguchiko, saw the Fujisan, cherry blossom, sakura. So very beautiful.
That's fantastic. And yeah, great opportunity to see all of those things. I have to ask the same question though. Favorite food so far?
Well, as I mentioned yesterday, I think I have associated myself with sushi, but he already said that. But the best meal I had so far was in at Lake Kawaguchi. We had an in-room kaiseki with the it was at the ryokan.
Mm.
And that was just amazing. Everything about it was amazing.
That is one of the best experiences I think you can have.
On the
meal-wise.
planet Earth.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. Glad that you had a chance to do that. I guess so. Since you've been here for these past 2 days at this event, have you been able to communicate with the audience so far? What do you think? Despite the language
The short
barrier,
answer is yes. Some, yes.
how has your communication been with the non-native speakers of English?
The non-native English speakers, yes. My communication has actually been very good. I've had lots of good conversations. It is it's very touching to hear that people are following Dora's research and trying to put that into practice. And I'm hearing about and as an example, seeing how Findy is building Dora into some of their own platform. It's really encouraging to see. And yeah, so it's been very, very good.
Oh, great. Yeah, it's and I'm glad that folks have been coming up and trying to talk. So there's still a chance, by the way, if anybody does want to ask questions, we'll be hanging out for at least a few minutes after the event. So
And we
don't.
talked about sushi together last night.
Yes.
Oh, excellent. Well, great topic. Um, so on to the name of our event, which is DevOps Days. Um, in the opening talk, we mentioned that DevOps Days has been around for a long time. Um, why do you think we've been talking about DevOps for so long?
I feel that there are real problems that people felt they wanted to solve that created this community. And until those problems are solved, there will always be this community.
What do you think? What's your perspective of DevOps?
My perspective of DevOps.
We've been in that we've been talking about DevOps for
Yes.
such a long time now. Why is it still so hard to do?
Yeah, I think that we still have, as Andrew mentioned, problems that we've been trying to solve. I think that one of the challenges is that we probably don't have all of the right people in the room having this conversation. I think that there are a lot of practitioners in the room. There are some leaders in the room, but I think there are very few executives in the room. And I think one of the biggest problems that we've been trying to solve since the very beginning of DevOps is that idea of alignment and setting the right incentives for teams. And when we set up incentives where teams are essentially working against each other, this causes a lot of friction and a lot of challenges for us. And so I love this community, and I'm glad that we're all here together. And it's important to remember that this community, the people that are trying to solve these problems, goes beyond the people that are able to and choose to come to these events.
Hmm. I think that's a great perspective.
I will want to add one thing in the context and the choice is to say we talk about these things. And there's definitely some progress you can make from conversation, but an aspect of it is also problematic. And I won't say this is about Japan, this is about a lot of the community. Uh, and I'll use a metaphor, maybe makes sense, maybe doesn't, but talk does not cook rice. At some point, someone has to do work. So the practices that you bring, the changes of the behavior can do more than all the words.
So we've been talking about this for many, many years now, but not doing things, not cooking rice, so to say. Um, is that what you'd say the main thing that we're doing wrong as an industry then? Is that our talk is not translating into action at the higher levels?
Well, there's some rice, right? Someone's cooking something somewhere. We're all eating. Everyone probably has some work to do. But at the same time, I believe that in most places, there's someone in that place that has the capability to solve all of the obvious problems. And maybe they've even said how to solve them. But there's some culture or there's some incentive or there's some other barrier that prevents that from happening. And many times you'll have a consultant come, they'll say exactly the same thing that person said, but now the executive will try to do it.
I I also think that it is true. We've been talking about, and some of us doing some work towards DevOps for 15 years. And I think we still have work to do. And I think that the job that I do or the job that someone like me did 15 years ago, we have made a lot of progress. So I think there's something to be celebrated there. We haven't reached the end. As it turns out, I don't think DevOps was ever a destination. There is no end. We're always going to be on this journey.
Kaizen.
So in that case, when people say we're doing DevOps, what do they usually mean then?
This is a really tough question.
I think this is similar to we're doing agile. Sometimes it means that they did nothing. And sometimes it means that they adopted a tool. And sometimes it means that they got people to try to work together better and be more aligned. And one of the things I do, because we have a lot of themes about language in this event especially, when I have a conversation with someone about DevOps, I try to adjust to what they believe it means. And then we can make progress from there.
One thing that strikes me a lot about your keynote, especially, is that when you say adjusting the language and finding out what they mean by that, it sounds like when it comes to DevOps, when it comes to Agile, we've known about the right way to improve things for a long time, going back to the 1950s, as you mentioned. Why don't organizations, if we know this, why don't organizations actually do it?
So there's a saying in the old Greece that all of the Greeks know what is right, but only the Spartans do it. Because it's hard sometimes. And if it's, I think for my own work, one of the principles I've tried to do with my DevOps, platform engineering work is try to make the right thing the easy thing. Because if the right thing is difficult, then people will not do the right thing.
So you're mentioning people and difficulty, which to me implies that this is mostly a people problem more than it is a systems problem. How would you say that translates here?
I think the lesson of the socio-technical system that I introduced is in some sense a refutation or that's probably not a good word for this audience, but it's suggesting that the people are part of the equation, but you also have to balance that with the tech. I feel like sometimes people say, oh, it's just a people problem, but that ignores some part of the problem. You have to see the people as important, but also the technology and specifically technical excellence and how these things come together to really get the true, we'll call it DevOps.
Yeah, and I think that, to your point, we oftentimes talk about DevOps as people or culture. And to Andrew's point, you can't separate the two, right? There's a very old saying in English that I hope this will translate okay. It is easier to work your way into a new way of thinking than it is to think your way into a new way of working. In other words, to change the culture, you have to change the work that is done. And so the technology comes in. A great example of this that we can all relate to, cloud comes in. That changes how we work. It maybe even changes how we communicate and the incentive structures that we have within our teams. That work, that technology changed the culture. And in changing the culture, we're also influencing the technology choices that we're making. So they're driving and sort of reinforcing each other.
One of the slides I had yesterday is that you have this circle between beliefs and behaviors on the socio side, and then you have this circle between the skills and the tools on the technical side. And those are all feeding back on each other.
So what I'm thinking then is that even if a company adopts the latest tools, but doesn't they don't change the way they work, the way they think, it's not going to actually help them improve. And this goes back to all the way to the 1950s of introducing new technology in mining. And I think that that brings us kind of to the latest piece of new technology. You mentioned cloud a second ago, but AI is now everywhere. And the first question I always like to think of when a new technology comes around is it hype or does it actually help us out? What do you think about that?
I think the answer to that question, is it hype or does it actually help us? I think the answer is yes.
Yes.
Yes. It is both hype and it has the potential to actually help us. And I think one of the biggest things that you can do as an individual to help understand, is this hype or is this real? You have to put your hands on the tool and try using it. Recognize that you're going to, I don't know, hold the wrong end of the hammer. You're going to use the tool wrong the first time you pick it up, potentially. But that's okay. It's a learning process. You have to use the tool so that you can understand what should you expect from it? How is it changing? How might this impact my work? And so we kind of start with this idea of curiosity. And that can help us understand, is this hype or is this real? Will this impact me and how?
So I think this is related to the answer he gave and some of the comments and questions leading up to this. But this is a reference to something Nathen shared, which is the J curve. So there's an aspect of this, and sometimes this will be used against agile or DevOps transformation in a company. When you first start to learn a new skill, and this would apply if you're trying to do judo, you're trying to play some music, you will actually perform worse potentially. You almost inevitably will be worse before you get better. So if you have an organization where that decrease in performance is used against you, you have to be very, very mindful about the experiments you do. So yes, you have to get your hands on it. It's a contact sport, but you should also be thoughtful about how you're going to go through that J curve and get to the other side.
When you mention the J curve, obviously this refers to an individual potentially or an organization's performance as a whole, possibly though even the industry as at large.
Absolutely.
So if we look at the industry, software development, basically the industry that we all work in, do you think that AI is helping people get better, or is it more about making them faster?
I think what Dora research shows is that it's an amplifier, right? And so it is in teams that are doing well, it is helping them improve. In many teams, it is helping them do something faster. Now, what thing are they doing faster probably depends on the team. Maybe you're writing code faster, but that does not necessarily mean you're delivering value faster or delivering more value. And so what we see sort of as we look across the industry is that software delivery throughput, as an example, is increasing, but so is software delivery instability. So while you may be pushing more software into production, it's more likely that you're going to roll that software back. And when you roll software back, that also introduces rework, because now I have to fix that software, which I probably didn't build into my plan. How many of you plan to fail? Probably not. You were going to fail. It doesn't matter if you plan for it. Failure doesn't care if you planned for it or not. But we have to have an environment where it's safe to fail because we can learn from that. We have to account for that.
Do you think that if a team then is already struggling, whether it's they're already making errors in production, for example, or maybe they're not delivering fast enough, is AI gonna make things better or worse for them?
It depends. The nature of the struggles they're having could be very different. The nature of their approach to adopting AI, to looking at the tools, how they're going to choose to use them could be very different. So I think it's very hard to say, this is exactly what would happen. I would predict it this way. But I want to tell an anecdote, both from my own career and then in specific. I feel like I'm pretty smart. I feel like I've seen a lot of things, but for me, this applies to all of the DevOps lessons. My ability to solve problems has been amplified by my friends, by the network of friends that I have and the work that I did or the relationship I built. So I can ask these people that were at a higher level on this specific thing than I was. So I think this is where, like, if you say anything, if you want to learn music, you want to learn chess, you want to learn judo, then you want to find the people that are good in these things and emulate their behavior. So the anecdote I want to tell, and this is someone who I worked with before that was a very good, very strong engineer. He led teams, he did other things, and he started using AI. In the last 6 months, he quit his job at a very, very well-paid job. He built something, he's written about 3 million lines of code by himself, one person, mostly Claude code, and he said he's thrown away 10 times more code, right? And so he has this experience, he had engineering background, and he's saying this is good, this is good, this is good, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad, right? So he has that already, and it's just, to the point Nathan made, an amplifier for him.
So basically, your friend was already a skilled, talented engineer.
Who would answer my questions?
But the idea is that because of his skill, he was able to use AI effectively to build all that code, delete it, modify it, and make it work for him.
Yes, and this was one of the lessons I tried to make in my presentation yesterday. If you just ask, here, build this thing, the chance that we'll build it is 0. But if you can break down, it's also related to the DORA introducing small batches, task decomposition, find a small problem, solve this small problem, solve this small problem, and then put all of these small solutions into solving the big problem.
So a lot of it, maybe what I'm hearing is that the way to make AI work well in practice is to break down complexity, these difficult, complex problems into a series of smaller tasks.
This is also true if there's no AI.
So in general, that complexity breakdown is the required skill, whether you're using AI or just building large systems.
This is software engineering. Yes. Software
And someone was explaining that in Japan, people don't see lean as associated with software. It's more associated with manufacturing. But there's many lessons that were in that lean manufacturing that teach the exact same thing.
So lean is a great way to standardize process, to simplify process through some standardization. Is that something that we can just let AI? Can we just ask AI to break down these really complex problems for us instead?
Yes, you probably should. I've definitely found myself, even sometimes I'll ask the AI for something and it will give me something, and I'll say, look, I need to take this solution and break it down into smaller commits. So can you help me take this one solution that you've given me and break it down into 3 or 4 different commits that I can send individually through the pipeline down the process? And it will do that for me. And then over time, like because I'm using it, I understand that it's better to ask for the smaller problem to be solved. And so we can together start pairing on this. And maybe I'll even talk to an AI or ask an AI to help. Like, let's design a system together. And then let's take this system design that we have. And I want you to break this down into smaller stories that we can solve together.
1000%. If you're following AI and the way that it's changed, even in the last 6 months, especially around the first of the year, the newest developments are really about the planning and the specs and using AI to build these task decompositions before it starts writing any code.
So that makes a lot of sense, I think. So it's working, it's having the skill needed to break down, but working with AI to help you break down some of those big tasks. I think a theme we're seeing is that if you want to use AI to help you write code, you need to be good at writing code to begin with. If you want to use AI to help you break down complex tasks, you need to understand how to break down these complex tasks. I guess this makes me think, though, how do we know when we're doing it right? Is there a way that we can measure? And how, if we're using, whether we're doing it ourselves or whether we're using AI, how do we measure if we're doing things correctly?
I'm not sure you will like my answer. The word correct is wrong. And you have many examples in the market right now where someone who did not have a background with code has built something that is impressive in one way or another. Some of them are to solve a small personal problem. Some of them are starting to make money. There's lots of examples right now where people had very little coding background, architecture background, have started to get impressive results with some of these tools. That being said, and the examples that we already gave, if you happen to have that background, then it's an amplifier. Now, what we have in front of us is, why are you building it? It's not just the code quality, like what is the thing you're delivering?
So basically, the question to ask is, why are we building what we want to build?
I think this was always true before as well. It's just the cycle, the feedback cycle, because it took longer for us to build things, was slow enough that we could, as an engineer, I'll give another personal story. Many times when someone gave me a task, I would say, this does not make sense. I don't understand why we want to build this. And if you actually force them to explain their logic, there were many bad ideas. So now we just have a much tighter loop, and AI can help us get through that much faster. So I hope that we can build better things than we did before because we get faster feedback that it's the wrong thing.
So in that case, then, how do we go back to measuring? Because measuring still, I know that you said it's not the right thing to ask for, but Dora is all about metrics, and you talked about different measurements. So what's your perspective on how you can measure to improve your use of AI and these new technologies?
Yeah, first, I think measurements are important, but measurements also can serve as a crutch or a shield for why I don't want to improve. right? I've worked with many teams who say, well, these measures aren't quite precise enough. I need to see a dashboard before I make any changes. Stop. You need to understand how things are going, sure, but then you need to do the work to improve. And sometimes the right metric, the right measurement to use is the metric or the measurement that will incite your team to act. What's going to cause you to change? I'm going to look at a number and I'm going to see that that number isn't where I want it to be, and I'm going to do something differently to change the value of that number. I think that's the first piece that you need to look at. I think the other thing that is really important about the metrics that you're measuring, you have to understand, what are they actually telling you? I see a lot of people today measuring and even building leaderboards within their organization on token consumption. Who's consuming the most tokens? We should give them a promotion. Good job consuming tokens.
Who's spending the most money?
Yeah. Your customers don't care how many tokens you've used, but they do care about the value that you're delivering to them. But on the flip side of that, with the token thing, if I put up a leaderboard and start, giving rewards to the person consuming the most tokens, I'm going to figure out a way to consume more tokens because I want that promotion. I want that bonus, whatever that is, right? So metrics are always a double-edged sword. So some of the things that you can do to sort of counteract that or to prevent that from becoming a problem, make sure that when you have metrics, you're not looking at one metric, but you're looking at kind of a constellation, a grouping of metrics, and hopefully, in the best case, those metrics provide some tension to one another. Are we moving faster or are we stable? We want both. But then I think the other thing is to look as far down the system as you can. Why are we delivering software? Not because we like to deliver software, it's because there's a consumer, a user, a customer, someone that we're trying to serve on the other end of that. As we deliver more software, are our sales increasing? Is our customer satisfaction going up? Can we connect these two things to one another and see how the work that we're doing provides value down the entire system?
So, so basically, then value is the important thing to look at and measure or consider at the very least.
Value is very undefined, though. It's valuable for your organization. I want to tell two quick stories, one from history and one from the last 3 months that's related to metrics. So historically, this is something I use when people want to talk about metrics. There was a problem. This comes from India. There's a problem with cobras. So the government decided, cobras are a snake, poisonous snake, that they will pay people for bringing them dead cobras. So people started bringing dead cobras, they're getting paid. What happened over time is they discovered people started cobra farms. So they were growing cobras to get the reward for the dead cobras. That's a metaphor. Now, since the beginning of the year, there was an initiative at Amazon. Everyone knows Amazon. They're probably better at software than many places. They decided to incentivize using AI. And they started measuring tokens, adoption. They built a bunch of metrics to drive. They're very metrics heavy culture. So Amazon is going to adopt AI. We're going to measure it. And what happened in less than 6 months, they created, this is also reinforcing the Dora story about instabilities. They created so many outages for themselves that they stopped this initiative. And this is very public. You can go confirm this and read this story. It's happened since the first of the year. So they drove this metric. We're going to adopt AI. And then they created so many outages, they said, okay, maybe not. We have to reevaluate this.
I like that. That's two really good examples of like measuring the wrong type of metrics. The obviously the India one, I can kind of see that coming. Didn't expect Amazon to run into similar issues. Um, so I could ask these questions and we could have this conversation all night. But I would love to start bringing in some questions from the audience. So if you have something that you'd like to ask, please do raise your hand and you can think about it for a moment. But I'll just keep asking questions otherwise, because like I said, I could ask all day. So I'd love to hear from you all. So I guess while we wait for some folks, oh, I see
はい。
Kawaguchi-san has a question.
はい。一つ
Oh, one
あります。
moment. If you
Sure.
can put yes, the English channel, and then we'll do the translation. There.
Hello, I hear you. He has to turn his on.
じゃあちょっと日本語で喋ってみます。通訳チェック用に今日本語で喋っています。Can you hear me? Okay. じゃあ、一つ質問というかまたコメントなんですけど、今スキルの話とかずっとしていただきましたが、その、AI というのが私の感覚だと去年の秋ぐらい、10月ぐらいから、ちょっとまた別のフェーズに入ってきたというか、大きくその社会に対して使いやすさを提供するような、すごくインパクトを持ってきた、加速しているのかなっていうのをすごく感じます。でも一方で、なんか私たち、このコミュニティとしては、DevOps のコミュニティもやっていますし、あとスクラムのアジャイルのコミュニティもやっているんですが、例えばコロナの、COVID が来た、2020年も、割とうまく乗り越えてきて、で、その前もいくつかの波を乗り越えてきたような気がします。リーマンショックとかね。で、その経験をちょっと思い出すと、今、すごく不安も襲ってくる時期ではあると思うんですけど、一方で、先ほどアンドリューさんがおっしゃってるみたいに問題を一つ一つ砕いて、一つ一つスモールステップで対応していくっていうことも、なんとなく私たち、なんか慣れてきたかなって思うんですよね。で、しかも横にいるコミュニティの知り合いと、もうここ私3日間ぐらいずっとAI どう思うみたいな議論をずっとしてて、これはなんかね、すごく力になるなって思うんです。なので、なんか DevOps Days AI とか作んなくても全然いいかなって思うんですけど、どこにも AI は来ちゃうので、なんかその中で、私らだからコロナ禍の DevOps とかやってないんで、同じように、やっぱ AI もそうやって乗りこなしていけば、みんなで話しながら乗りこなしていけばいいのかななんて、今、私はこの3日間でみんなと話しながら感じています。それぞれアンドリューさんとネイサンさんは、なんか、っていう、なんていうか、少し楽観的な感じを私は持っているんですけど、どう思いますかっていうのをちょっと、どれぐらいフィアを持ってて、どれぐらいそれに対して信頼をしているかっていうあたりを少し教えていただけるとありがたいなと思います。すみません。長くなりました。
Yeah, so I think that just for the English speakers in the room, the quick gist of the question is, Andrew and Nathan, you seem very optimistic about AI. Where's the fear and anxiety? What are you concerned about? And what should we as a community be concerned about as well?
I think there's some reasons to have fear and anxiety, but at the same time, the reward for the anxiety and fear is much less than the reward for the enthusiasm. And if you look through history, you will be better, in my opinion, if you embrace the optimistic, because if you are wrong, then maybe you fail. But if you're right, then you win the game that you want to win. So it's always better, in my opinion, to be optimistic and to build the thing that you want to see in the world than to be afraid.
Yeah, plus one to that. I do think that there is real anxiety though, and I don't think that like as optimistic as we may feel and as leaning into AI as we are, I think that there is real cause for anxiety. There are ethical concerns, there are environmental concerns, there are job concerns. I think that one of the things, and we were talking about this earlier, one of the things that is happening with AI is some professionals' identities are being attacked. If you identify as a software engineer and the craft and the value that you bring is being able to write really clean code with great architecture, AI is coming for that. And you're right to be fearful. I think that what AI is forcing us to do is think, not I'm a coder, I'm a developer, but rather I'm an engineer. I solve problems, right? And so it's changing how we approach the work, but we have to be very clear that might be changing how you view yourself. And that can be very, very uncomfortable. You couple that with maybe unrealistic expectations from management and leadership. We've bought AI, so we expect more value from you now. We won't give you time to learn, to experiment. We just want more value right now. There was one research study done by a company called Multitude.
We want to skip the J curve.
Yeah, we want to skip the J curve, essentially. But Multitudes did a research study, and one of the things that they found was they followed a couple of teams over time, and they found the teams that were using more AI, in general, their software engineers were opening up more pull requests. So they were more productive. And I said, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then they said, but we found this other thing. Those same engineers were opening more pull requests out of regular business hours. So instead of during the workday, yes, they were opening more pull requests, but it was in the evening, on the weekend. And my immediate, very optimistic response was, of course, AI is so fun. I can do so much more. I'm going to keep working. But when they interviewed the people who were in their study, what they found was that it wasn't that they were doing that because they were excited. They were doing that because the expectations shifted. Their management wanted more from them because they now have AI, and they felt the added pressure. And I think this is something that we all have to be very careful about in our industry, especially the leaders, unfortunately, some of the leaders that probably aren't in this room. But maybe you're watching the video.
I will add we sort of had this anxiety with cloud before. We kind of had this anxiety with DevOps before. There were people who used to work with mainframes and Bash that were sysadmins, used to working in an old way, and then there were new tools, Puppet, Chef, Kubernetes, and there was some anxiety and there was some resistance. So whenever you introduce something new, you always have this anxiety, you always have this resistance, and yet here we are. We came through it because there was some value, and maybe some of it was they were right to have this anxiety, but I think it's better. I think it's becoming better. And you got rewarded for embracing the new things, creating value with the new things more than you did holding to the old things.
ありがとうございます。そういえば思い返せば、川口さん、新しいもの来ると大体楽しそうだよねっていつも言われていたのを今思い出しました。多分そんな方が皆さん、この部屋には多いのかなと思いますので、乗りこなしていきましょう。じゃあ、次の質問。Next question is okay? Okay. じゃあ、
ありがとうございます。
はい、日本語で質問させていただきます。お話ありがとうございます。キーノートもすごく楽しませていただきましたし、今日のお三方のインタビューは非常に、学びになるなと感じております。で、僕がお聞きしたいのが、そのデブオプスっていうのを考えたときに、今、その開発者ではない人たちが自分のアイディアをもうプロダクトとして作れるようになってきている。実際、プロダクトマネージャーがアイディアをそのまま作ることができたよってすごい喜んだりしてるんですね。で、それ僕すごくいいことだと思っています。で、なんですが、そこにはやはり運用の観点だったりとか、その拡張性との設計の観点がない状態で作られているので、またここにちょっとデブとオプスの分断が生まれているっていうのが少し起こっているなと思っています。で、そこに対してちょっと今思い悩んでるのは、なので、自分の見解としては、なんでそこのオプスをエンジニアたちがしっかりプロダクトマネージャーたちをサポートして、オプスの観点を注入していくのが大事だなって思ってる自分と、いやでも AI がこの後超進化していったら、オプスもAI がやってくれちゃうような時代になるんじゃないかっていうのがあって、でも、どっちの未来も楽しそうではあるんですけど、だからお二人がそのオプスの観点について、今どう考えてらっしゃるのか、ぜひ聞かせていただきたいです。
I'll tell another personal story. So to repeat the question, we're saying all these things can be created with AI from a development perspective, but there's also creating an operations responsibility. And maybe the AIs will eventually be able to do this, but if it hasn't been designed to be operated, then maybe this will be difficult for at least some period. And I have a friend, so this is a personal anecdote again, that is someone from the old days of DevOps that I met in this community 15 years ago. And he's worked in all the big web companies. He's a very good engineer. And he has a friend who's a salesman. And his salesman friend has another salesman friend who got Claude Code and Replit, which is a kind of a platform for developing things, to make him an application. And he was paying Replit $500 a month to host this. And he had some success. People started using it. And then it was having problems scaling operations, the obvious things I'm sure you have experienced or thought of. And at the end of this, my friend who had this background in ops and this salesman friend, they took the code from Replit and they put it onto a new server they manage. He went and he basically redid all the stuff that this other person had done, and now he gets $500 a month from the salesperson. So I think everything you said is true and will happen, but it's also a big opportunity because it will create that obvious need for the operational expertise.
I also think, just to layer on that, I'm not sure if this translates well. The cat is out of the bag. AI is here, and more people are going to be building. And this, to Andrew's point, is a huge opportunity for those of us that have this operational background, not only to use AI to help us in troubleshooting, in the work of operations. I mean, think of it. As an operator, how many times have you grepped through logs or opened up a tail and watched the logs fly by? AI is so good at summarizing and finding those patterns. It's way better than you are at that. So AI can absolutely help operations folks. And there's a huge opportunity. In fact, as organizations, and I said this in my talk earlier, as organizations are looking to get more value out of technology, probably the best leverage that technologists bring is making it safer and possible for anyone to be a builder. The business knows their problem better than we do in engineering. And AI makes it easier for them to go and solve it on their own. But let's build the guardrails, build the feedback mechanisms, build the operational muscle that allows them to do that safely in a way that is scalable and in a way that will work. So I think it's a huge opportunity for operations who also, we tend to be the most resistant to change. Let's be very honest. Developers always want the new, the new, the new. Operators, we want to work on things that we understand. There's always something new that we have to learn and understand. We need to embrace that as well.
ありがとうございます。本当、お二人おっしゃる通り、しっかり大きな機会として捉えていくのが大事だなと思いました。では、次の質問に行ってみたいと思います。
さすが。あ、日本語でよろしくください。素晴らしいお話、2日間にわたってありがとうございます。とっても、感動しています。僕の質問は、ですね、今、私の会社で、良いエンジニアリング文化とは何だろうっていうものを、明文化というか、クラリファイして、それを文化として浸透させていこうみたいな取り組みを、ジャスト始めたんですけれども、一つ大きな課題として、良いエンジニアリングを行うインセンティブがすごく薄いっていうのを感じているんです。また評価、例えば評価がインパクトがすごく編集されていて、結果良いエンジニアリングをドリブンするモチベーションがないっていうのがすごく大きな課題だと思っているんですけれども、お二人の考えるどのように良いエンジニアリング文化を組織に浸透させるインセンティブ設計というものができるかということを、先ほど文化とインセンティブの話があったのでお伺いしたいと思います。いかがでしょうか。
So how do we, as a newer organization that's just getting started, how do we help a good engineering culture take root? Do you want to start?
I'm going to use a metaphor that I used before that will hopefully make sense in this context, especially because you speak a different language than I do. If I try to speak Japanese, maybe I can get a few words, but you'll instantly know that I am not a native Japanese speaker. And one of the things that I believe is happening in a lot of organizations is there's no native engineer. They read a blog post, they watched a video, they read a book, but there's no one to learn the engineering excellence from. The only way that I could learn Japanese is to have a native Japanese person who's willing to help me make progress. So if you have a bunch of people and none of them can speak Japanese, then it will be very difficult for anyone to learn Japanese. My wife grew up in a country where English was not her language, but they all studied English. But then when she gets to the United States, she had to almost start over because it was people who didn't speak English teaching other people to speak English when no one could speak English. So this is the problem I think you have in many of these organizational discussions about culture is you need someone from somewhere to come that is the native level engineer that can teach the rest of them to be at this level.
I think another thing that is really important here, especially as you're just getting started, and this is certainly how I've approached my career, I think that the job of engineering is to enable the business. As an engineer, you must understand the business of your business. Why are we here? We aren't here to write code. We aren't here to, but for the cloud days, maybe rack servers in a data center, right? These have been outputs of my work, but this has never been the job. The job is to further the goals of the business, to meet the needs of the customers. And I think that you want to, right now, especially as you're just getting started, you've got to plant those seeds. That our role as engineering is, yes, we want to be very good engineers, but we're doing that for a purpose that is beyond engineering itself. We're here for the business of our business.
ありがとうございます。大変参考になりました。ありがとうございます。
Well, thank you very much. We are about out of time here, but this has been fantastic. We have chance for maybe one other question if anybody had their hand up. But actually, uh, so while we wait, I guess this is more of a question for the audience to think of too. Where do you guys think AI and DevOps fit in? And that's not something that we're looking for an answer for right now. But as we continue to think about this community and how we can continue to advance culture talks, technology talks, that's definitely something that I would love to hear your feedback on, and the rest of the committee would love to hear your feedback on, because as we've just discovered, most of our conversation tonight was about AI and how it impacts usage at companies. So please think about that as as we continue thinking about this event and conference. Anyways, please, with the final question.
Hi. I was thinking about the things you mentioned of builders, people that are not developers and wants to create their own applications. But my question is, how do you see in the near future the actual roles that are, inside the DevOps, DevOps cycle, production engineers, sysadmins, all these roles that are here. How do you see that Gen AI is transforming these roles, and which roles you might think that are gonna maybe disappear or be transformed, and how those roles needs to adapt in the future?
All of them.
Yes. I think all of them will be impacted. All of them need to adapt. All of them need to start using these tools and understanding how they can help them. Some of the real things that I'm already seeing start to happen is that the lines between roles are getting blurry. I see more and more product managers being the ones that are building the prototypes. I see more software engineers getting connected to the users and writing out the PRDs, the product requirements documents, like doing the design, and those roles start to blur. I think when you move into operations, we've kind of always been on this path where operations, your production engineers, are going to participate in writing the application code to help make it more reliable. We're going to see that continue. So a production engineer is also going to be a software engineer. And if we're lucky, those software engineers are also going to take some ownership for what happens in production and provide some of that production engineering. So I think we're going to see a lot of roles start to blur and cross with one another. That's one thing that I think is coming.
We already see this in the US. I'm sure this will happen here, but you, to the point he was making, have the product people are starting to produce code. The code people are starting to produce products. The designers who used to do graphics and user interface stuff are starting to make things. There's really just a race to create.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So that was great, and we are officially out of time on our last session. But
Can I make one?
few seconds, please do.
So I told a lot of stories about my friends, and I want all of you to be my friend. So this is not the end of this conversation. This is just the beginning. If you contact me on LinkedIn, you want to tell me a story, ask me a question, hopefully one day I can be on a stage and tell your story.
Yes, that would be awesome. Yes, please connect with all of us and after this and online and everything. Anyways, guys, thank you so much. This was fantastic. We really appreciate it.
Hi.
Thank you.
Arigato.
Arigato.
We would also like to say, so If you can stick around for just a few minutes, we'll be doing a little bit of a closing session for day 2. But we'd also like to say thank you so much to our interpreters in the back. They've done a fantastic job. Thank you very much. Okay. So from here, we will wrap things up with a ceremonious picture for everybody.